name is Denise Baxter. I work as the Vice Provost of Indigenous Initiatives here at Lakehead University. Some people asked how long I've been here, 6 years now. So happy to be here. We're very happy that you're able to join us today. This is our contribution to Research and Innovation Week. And this year, our talk, we have two guests coming from outside of the city. The talk is Trapping as Methodology and the Impacts of Climate Change on the Development on Land. So Lakehead University respectfully acknowledges that its campuses are located on the lands of Indigenous people. And where we are right now, if you kind of walk to the end of the hallway and look out, you'll see an MQWaju. It's the traditional territory of Fort William First Nation and Anishinaabe territory. And the treaty place where we are right now is the Robertson-Spear Treaty signed in 1850. To the south of us, Lakehead Aurelia is located on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, including the Yodawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi nations, collectively known as the Three Fires Confederacy. Lakehead University acknowledges the history that many nations hold in the areas around our campuses and is committed to a relationship with First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples based on the principles of mutual trust, respect, reciprocity, and collaboration in the spirit of reconciliation. I would also like to acknowledge Dr. Lana Ray. She was unable to join us today. She unfortunately called me on Tuesday and she's sick. So she is working remotely on Zoom, but unfortunately was not able to join us here in person today. But it was Dr. Lana Ray who made the connection with Elder Tom, who's joining us. She's working on 2 NSERC projects with Stefan as well. So what we thought we'd do is kind of bring some of that work together through some of the NSERC grants that she is part of. So it is my pleasure to introduce Tom Morrisseau-Borg. Tom is a knowledge keeper from the Red Rock Indian Band. He possesses extensive knowledge about his traditional territories as a trapper and a general land-based practitioner. He's a member of the Ontario Certified Engineering Technicians and Technologists, and previously was environmental monitoring for his First Nation. He has advised on archaeological digs and hydro transmission line sites, and he has represented Red Rock Indian Band on the Water Management Committee, the Lake Nipigon Advisory Committee, and has been a band member and member of Local Citizens Committee for Forestry Planning and Issues for over 2 decades. That's just a small little drop of what I'm sure is a very long CV. But we're really pleased to welcome Tom here. Tom is going to speak first. We have some slides that'll be rolling behind. Then I'm going to introduce Stefan, and then we'll have some time for Q&A. So I have no clock, so Stacy, you're gonna have to shoot me 5-minute, 10-minute signs because I left my phone back there. All right, so Elder Tom, welcome.
Miigwech. As stated, my name is Tom Morrisseau-Borg. Morrisseau is my traditional status name, and I just took the Borg name in recognition of my grandfather that brought me up, helped bring me up. I'm a member of the Red Rock Band, and I've been, grew up on the shores of Lake Helen. It was a very simple way of life. We didn't have very much. We utilized the land for majority of our food. And the construction of a lot of utensils that we used. The years I spent growing up in the land is something I'll always cherish, and what it provided for us, the medicines that I've learned from elders and from my grandparents and my parents, we still utilize today. I grew up trapping, not knowing what trapping was, I guess. It was just a way of life for us. It provided income, put food on the table. And in so saying that, it was also connecting me with nature that I thought I knew a lot about, but didn't. Didn't at the time, and it was, it's still today, I'm still learning today. I still haven't learned everything there is to know, but going forward, through the years, it was very beneficial to me, being connected with nature in that respect. But a lot of the times, we all have issues and build up with stress, I guess you'd call it, or whatever. So a lot of times I would go back to the land, and it was like a medicine for me, and it just regenerated me, I guess. And I still do that today. I go to the cabin a lot. I have a cabin back in the bush on the trap line. And if any of you want to go trapping, I gotta let you know it's a lot of work. It's not easy. It's very tough. We grew, how I started off trapping, it's all we had was snowshoes that we manufactured ourselves. And today I call it Hollywood trapping because we have quads, snow machines, vehicles. The old days, in the earlier years, I used to travel with my uncle on his line and help him out. A lot of times I'd be asked to go and help him. And he had 5 cabins. And we used to walk those on snowshoes, excuse me. Take us usually 5 to 6 days to make the route. And it was, on some of the teachings he gave me on those trips with them were something I haven't forgotten, I still utilize today. And so what I've done, I've passed this on to my children. I brought them up on what nature and the Creator has provided for us and how we utilize it out there. But the main thing I thought that when I was entailed with that growing up is to have respect. We must have respect for what we have out there. It's, and I see so much of it going the other way today. I can not only everyday people, but also industry. It's, it hurts a lot to what I see. Because I have a feeling with it that I guess I was brought up with, I guess, and entailed in me, and sometimes it's very difficult. It's very difficult sometimes for me to share that. It's hard. But the changes that I've seen going on now out there, I noticed them a little bit at first, and this was maybe 10 to 15 years ago, maybe even before that, but I didn't realize what was happening. I had a sense, but sitting on the different committees for my community, for the Red Rock Band, as I got quite involved with the forestry and the practices that they use in mining. And a lot of it was good, but there was a lot of mispractice also. And that wasn't put forward for everybody to see, and it still goes on today. It's the ecosystem have changed in a lot of areas for the trees that they're putting back, and it all boils down to money, I guess, and cost. And some of the trees they're putting back now are more hardy and hardier trees, so they withstand the elements that are out there. And just to give you an example, years ago there used to be clear cuts where you could see for 40 miles. You could go up on top of a ridge or somewhere and see for 40 miles where you could see nothing. And they come in with big bulldozers, D7, D8s, with big claws on the back of the machines and scarify the cutover areas to prepare the site for tree planting. The tree planting was done in regards to 1 tree for 1,000 trees they took, which should have been the other way around. We never put back enough, and we didn't put back enough early enough. And I guess you call it, I'm not too educated in biology, but do you call it biodiversity, where they put back the wrong species that was harvested. They removed a lot of the black spruce as a favorite and white spruce, and end up putting back jack pine, sometimes out of airplanes, helicopters, wherever it landed, that's where it grew. Extensive crews out there planting with no follow-up on checking how the planting was done. But it's gotten better over the years. And growing up, I used to be scared of the MNR. I was a young guy with treaty rights, but still scared of the game wardens, hide on the game wardens, hide on the police. And I didn't know why. It's just something, I guess the way we had issues there in that area. But the ministry has come a long way with what they're doing with their forestry practices, and it's changed quite a bit, and we're seeing results, but not to the extent that it could have been. And I see the ecosystems changing now from old plantations from 40 years ago that has that effect on everything that's out there. The one thing that bothered me the most with their practices was the herbicide spraying. And I'm still adamant about it today. It's a chemical, and they've come back with different scenarios where we got better chemicals, This is not going to hurt you. You can drink this, but I see it on my trap line. I've had areas where they've sprayed. For one example is I have to go through 3 power lines. The new power line was just put in a few years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. And I have to walk through these areas or drive through with my bike, and I get back home and my wife tells me to go to the garage to change because it's in my clothes. And it's previously, before I even got up to where the power lines were, I could smell this stuff. No word of a lie, a quarter mile away. If the prevailing winds were blowing my way, I could smell the chemical. And it was a very harsh chemical. And what it done is it just killed everything. It just, everything that was on the ground and everything. So I took it upon myself to do, I guess you'd call it research or studies in that area, just to see what it's doing to the soils. I set numerous sets for marten, for weasel, fox that was in that area, and nothing for years, nothing, because all the food's gone, everything's gone, everything's dead. So the animal knows what he's doing, so he'll go with wherever the food is. And I'm still totally against spraying today. There's other ways to do it. You can plant proper vegetation to counteract what you're trying to do there. And there's hand tending, but hand tending gets into policy, I guess, because they're worried about people getting hurt and everything else, and having to pay compensation. So it's just, what they say is too costly. But one plus thing about the whole thing is now the First Nations around Lake Nipigon, we formed what's called the Nipigon Forest Management Group, and we're in the process of eliminating chemical spraying altogether. It's slowly subsiding. We started off with a 20% decrease, and it's going down from there. But already we got feedback. Is this going to work? Is this actually going to work on what we're doing? Maybe the trees that we planted aren't going to come back now because we're not using the chemicals anymore. See, all the chemicals do is the seedlings are planted very small. And then the trees with the leaves on them, they grow up faster. So they put shade on these little trees so they don't grow. So they go in and spray it to kill everything. Kill all these, it's supposed to be, but they're killing everything else also. They say they're not, but they are. And it's something that's I think they've looked at and changed what they're using, but I think it's just to help people like myself say, well, it's okay, but it's not. A chemical is a chemical, and we got to remember that. The other things I like to share with you is trapping you can't make a living on today. It's just, it's impossible. It's you can work as hard, just the way costs have gone and how the market's gone with the fur industry. It's gone downhill. It's a lot of people even say it's not worth trapping anymore. But for myself, it's not so much the money, it's the connection with the land and working with these with what's out there. And we have a great respect for them. I always lay tobacco. I take parts of different animals and I put back in the tributaries I've taken them from. Beaver especially is one of my favorite animals. I observe the beaver very much, and the engineering capabilities of this animal just supersedes everything I've seen. It's just unbelievable how they can build a home out of sticks, mud, and rock, and leave a center hole all the way up for air. I don't know how they do it. It's unbelievable how they monitor their water levels. And they'll actually go and open a dam if there's too much water and plug it up when they need more water. Some of the things I've seen in respect to those animals is their grooming. A lot of their feed piles in the winter, they'll take sticks back in their house to eat, take all the bark off and take the stick back outside. Their washrooms are set to the side on one side of the lodge, or else they'll have it in the tributary coming back into the lodge from outside and from underneath the ice. They're a very clean animal. And they groom themselves extensively. And a lot of times I watch them so much, I realize I trap them and everything else, but I don't know, it's just a connection I have with the beaver. It's something I've showed to my children also, how diligent these animals are. And I think without them, there is a lot of animals that would not survive. They provide for ducks, geese, frogs, roosts, everything else, the vegetation they produce. And a lot of people don't look at that. They just go ahead and take out a beaver dam totally. I see a lot of trappers do it. And I try to share with them that you've got to have a balance. You've got to have a balance with the animals. You can't go and take everything and end up with nothing or disrupt their whole system. Everything's in a circle. Everything's connected. And if you look at it, when you start depleting one area, there's a drastic change in other areas. I've always been taught to work with nature. Don't try and alter nature anyway. If you do, there's consequences. It affects the whole ecosystem. It's still beneficial, I guess, resource-wise and for income and everything else, but you got to have a proper balance. And I think in working with different committees that I was able to sit on, but other people also have an influx in decision-making on a lot of the construction that's going on today. Fish ladders and something we never had before. The community I'm from, the river that my grandparents lived on, and the lake they live on, Lake Nipigon, was in Virgin Falls prior to the dams. And she told me the story and asked them to move downstream. They were going to set them up downstream, which is now Parmachine. It's another one of our communities. It's in the lower part of the river. Not telling them though that they were going to dam the river. So when they did, some of them left and some of them didn't. Eventually they moved them all out and they flooded the whole area. They didn't even cut the trees. They flooded their graveyards, their homes. And they're still there today. If you go down, scuba dive or go underwater there, you can still see the remnants of that village. It was heartbreaking for a lot of the people because they were on the lake and they had to move down to the river, and it was a big change. And then with the dams on the river, the fish start disappearing. There was many issues. The erosion was unbelievable, still going on today. But they adapted, and then from there they moved back to Lake Helen, where we are today. They got a piece of land there by the mouth of the Nipigon River, and that's where we are established today. It's a thriving little community. They're doing very well. Resource-wise, the lake has depleted in fish, and partially that was due to logging and they call it river rafting. They used to haul, put logs out in the ice all winter, then haul them with tugboats and big booms down the lake. And all the bark that was coming off these trees that were in the water for year after year after year smothered all the spawning beds. The fluctuation of the river affected one big spawning ground for pike at the mouth of the river. And I fought with that one for years, and it's gone now. It's the sediment that was, all they needed was a little break wall, and they wouldn't put it in. And all those fish are no longer there. And we used to paddle across to take fish from there to eat. I got to tell you a story. Growing up, we had all we used was a bucksaw and an axe to heat our home. That's all we had. And we used to have to climb the hill, little mountain, and cut trees up there, throw them down again, and put it on a homemade sleigh, pull them home, then bucksaw them up, and then split them, and then pile them. Then we get that out of the way, and then we had the summer off, which was great. But those years doing that, it was, we were told, because we had no fridge, and our potatoes that were in the ground, I couldn't understand that one myself, but I guess it was, the ground doesn't freeze after a certain depth, so that's where we used to keep our potatoes, but I didn't like digging them up and when we needed them. It was a lot of work. It was hard, but we'd get sent down to go and get fish sometime for supper, and we'd walk out in these rafts or these booms, and we'd have contests on how many booms did you walk before you catch a fish? And then what we used for tackle was we used cut the handles off tablespoons and drill 2 holes and had a piece of snare wire for the treble, and then just twine, and we just drag it behind us as we walked out on these booms. And we'd always be told, you just 2, don't take any more than 2 fish. And we used to get hecked if we brought back more than 2 fish, because we utilized that, we ate that, and sometimes there'd be left over for a little meal, but not very often. And it was simple. It was a simple way of life. And I found out later the house we were in, we didn't have any insulation in the attic, in the walls. But the wood stove was always going. There was always a pot on the stove, and we had no timetable to come and eat. We just go, whenever you're hungry, you just went in and ate and back outside again. And our parents never worried about us. We're up climbing a mountain. We're gone somewhere for hours and hours. And there was no worry about us. I guess just the way of us growing up, and they were, I guess, felt we were safe, I guess. I don't know. But something else I want to just touch on is a little more is on what we're seeing with the, I'd like to get back to it a bit, is what I'm seeing is on the trap line now, what I'm seeing with the changes, there's different species now. We have cougar, I have Wolverine. Wolverine is becoming extensive right through our area now. I never had them before. Raccoons. I've caught raccoons in my traps now. Why raccoons? Like I've never, there's no raccoons. And it's changing too fast. And even the animals, like the fur itself is not what it used to be. A lot of the marten pelts now are way thinner. The beavers, guard hairs are not there with what used to be there before. Are changing. I have to change my. I used to start in August. Like a trap line, you got to run all year. It's you got to keep your equipment up in top shape. You got to look after your traps. You got to boil them and stain them. It's just called the stain that you use on them. Keep them from rusting. It goes on and on like that all through the year. But I usually start in August, and I used to go out and get my boxes ready because we start setting in October. But now I set in late November. If I set any earlier, the bears are still out. They used to be hibernating by then. The fur is not prime. A lot of times they won't even bother with your bait because their favorite food is shrews and everything else out there on the ground that their staple food is. So they'll go after that instead of going after your bait. So it's changed quite a bit in that respect. I'm going to share some pictures with you that are, we'll just go through them after they come up, but I just want to say the river I'm on, it's a fast flowing river, and it supports a lot of fish that I utilize. Our whole family utilizes it actually. But that river is actually taking out the Trans-Canada Highway and the CP rail. And that was only 6 years ago, I think, 6 or more years ago. And now what we're experiencing there is drought conditions where it totally dries up to nothing. I mean, there's nothing. I don't know if you can see it here, yeah. Like it's a change I thought I would never experience. Because the river has provided so much for all the years I've been there. And I've been on that piece of property, I guess now it's going on close to 50 years. And it's, the changes to me are scary. I had high bush cranberries all along the shore we used to use, and I haven't seen them there now for 6 years. The weasels, ermine. I'm catching weasels at the same time of year in December. And those are the colors we're getting. We're getting black streaks in them. And the reason the weasel turns white is for camouflage, because he hunts in the winter in the snow. He blends in with the snow, so it's easier for him to get his prey, and they're not changing. I'm getting brown weasels in late December. The marten pelts are not as heavy and thick as before. The beaver pelts are altogether different. The species themselves, like frogs, I haven't seen for a long time now. Frogs are disappearing. Porcupine, I haven't seen in 10 years. So porcupines affect my trapping of fisher. Fisher staple or favorite food is the porcupine. And I've caught fisher in the past, but I haven't got one now for, I'd be going on 7 years. And the area I'm in was a very productive area for fisher. And where the porcupines are gone, and well, everybody said just a cycle. It's a cycle. It's, oh, maybe it is. It's like climate change. Climate change is a cycle. A lot of people, Tom, you worry too much. You're worrying about. I said, no, I says, I do totally agree with you. It's a cycle on the scientific part of it. But every one of us is a catalyst to climate change. on what we're doing out there. And now the effects are showing up, and it's coming really fast. It's something I see in the land, like even the trees. My wife and I, we've been harvesting birch sap because birch is a very medicinal tree for us. Teas and the bark, and use it for baskets and everything else. We've been tapping trees for, I think, over 17, 18 years maybe, and utilizing 3 tablespoons a week or a day. We take 3 tablespoons of sap. Health-wise, it's supposed to be good for us, and it seems to be working for me. I've been very fortunate, knock on wood. But what's happened now is I noticed the trees, a lot of times they're wilted, the leaves are wilted, and it's just from lack of moisture. The wetlands on the trap line, I dig down a foot, there's nothing, it's dry. The bark on those birch trees now are getting thinner. They're not as thick. It's just like they're sick. That's what's happening. So what you're going to see is you're going to see a lot of the birch disappearing. It's what's coming. And then I found out just through reading, and I forget where I read it, but it's there's now bacteria in the sap, and they're doing preventive measures out there for you to boil it, but then you get rid of the natural nutrition that you need. It's getting boiled away, so it's no use taking it. So we stop harvesting it now. It's one change that's affected us. The animals we harvest and are staple food for us are partridge, is good. Growing up, we used to eat a lot of beaver and muskrat, moose, a lot of moose. Still eat a lot of moose today. A lot of partridge and a lot of rabbits. Quash ganabo is the best one for rabbits. It's a soup with potatoes, dumplings, a little bit of turnip. And it's an excellent food. But what's happened now is what I've been noticing just the last 10 years, we can't eat the innards anymore. The liver, kidneys, the heart. And my own personal consensus on this is it's attributed to spraying. A lot of it's coming from the spray. Moose are twig eaters, and they spray an area to kill all the little trees with leaves on them. The moose goes there and eats chemical infested plant. Rabbits, partridge are the same thing. Partridge, they store everything in what's called a gizzard here. A lot of times I'll open that up before I even open the bird to clean them and check that out just to see how it looks in there. And it's a change. It's different than what I've seen in the past. And the innards, especially on moose now, I'm getting a lot of it in moose. I think I have a few pictures here. And these were taken near Marathon, some in our area and now some west of us. And it's happening quite a bit. It's, there's studies going now. I'm involved with the Union Ontario Indians, and they're getting samples done down there. They've got some samples sent to them. And I haven't got a report back yet on actually what they found. I hope they share it with me. I don't know if they will. But my way of life that I had, I think growing up and the changes I'm seeing is something I wanted to share, just to pass on. I go into the schools a lot to teach the youth and the young kids on trapping and what's out there. That's how I got into the schools, and because my wife teaches the language, that was another big shoe in, I guess. But I got in that way. And then what I done was get in there and teach them a little bit about trapping, and it's more on conservation and to be respectful for what we have out there and to look after it. And I'm enticing it into the young ones now, and I see it as I've been doing this for about 9 years, and now I see the parents are taking them out, and it's good. It's a good thing. And we're working. I always explain to them the full circle terminology and how everything is connected. And you'd be surprised some of the questions that come out of the kindergarten, grade 2 and grade 3. Some of them just blow me away. And I take them in, I let them skin and build martin boxes. And now we have a trail designated for them in the schoolyard that we've made trails so they can show them different plants and different trees that, some of them didn't know the difference between a birch and a poplar and aspen, black spruce or a white spruce. And so teachers take them out regularly now. It's, and I think it's something we got to do with the young ones. Get them away from, get them out there and get them back on the land. It's something that I'll continually to work with and going forward. Pretty well.
You want to flash up the last 2 slides there, Kara, for us?
Yeah. Well, it's my granddaughter. She set snares. I taught her how to set snares. She was coming out with me when she was 3 years old on the trap line. She'd ride the quad, and I'd open the trap for her, and and then she'd get the fur and take it back and put it in the bag or put it in thing. And one thing about animal, like trapping is I was always told to brought up not to let the animals suffer. I was brought up with Lakehead traps, and that was a long, long time ago. And a lot of the beavers, the muskrat, we had drowning sets, but the other animals, a lot of times they were alive, and it was hurtful. But today we've changed. I no longer use lake holds just for drowning sets for beaver, otter, and muskrat. I don't use them for dry sets anymore, for the dry fur. It's all conibears. But conibears, I've figured it out over the years. I bend the triggers just out a bit so that when they touch it, they get an instant kill. You don't get it on the body or elsewhere. And it makes a difference. But then we had to change some of our traps to a more humane trap is what they wanted. It was brought over by, I think, Greenpeace and some other groups. So we had to get rid of all those, and it's very expensive to do. And the new ones we have now are actually damaging a lot of our fur because they're hitting too hard, and they're leaving lines in the fur. So all the hair slips off the fur once it's dried and prepared. It's a change we got to deal with, and but when I get out there and I see an animal in the trap, the first thing we do, or even get to a lake or to a river, it's always to lay tobacco and say a prayer. I don't do it. I'll be honest. I don't do it all the time. I forget sometimes, like everybody else. But the majority of the times I'm out there, we've got to be grateful for what we have. We've been provided so much. We've been provided everything, and we just got to look after it. And that's what I teach the kids, or try to put across to the kids in school. I says, my grandparents and my parents looked after what they had so I could experience it, and I'm experiencing it now. Now you guys, I says, you're all special people. I says, you all have a gift in you, every one of you. And someday, I don't know what your gifts are. You don't know, but you're going to have gifts, but you want to look after what the Creator has provided for us here. So your kids, you're going to have kids, and they can experience and enjoy the rewards that we are having today. you know?
They're great
And I'll end
words.
with that. Thank
Those
you
are
so
great
much.
words. Thank you. And there's a beautiful photo of the lake right
Yeah.
behind us. Thank you.
Yeah.
So we will have some time for questions. So if you're thinking of things in your head, just hold on to those. So miigwech very much, Tom, for sharing a very small piece, but an important part of your life. It's now my pleasure to introduce Stefan McLaughlin. Stefan is a professor with the Clayton H. Riddell Faculty of Environment, Earth and Resources. That would be at the University of Manitoba. His work with students and colleagues through the Environmental Conservation Lab at the University of Manitoba focuses on environmental justice and health, traditional foods, environmental monitoring, and Indigenous data and research sovereignty. It is all partnership-based and bridges Indigenous science. I'm getting feedback. I'm getting a weird feedback as bugging my ears. It is all partnership-based and bridges Indigenous science with the natural and social sciences. This Indigenous-led work documents and challenges the disproportionate impacts of hydropower, mining, and other intensive resource extraction on these communities. Yet it is also solutions-oriented and advocacy-based. In amplifying local voices and concerns with decision makers and the public, it acts to increase public awareness and facilitate political change regarding these issues. So I'd like to welcome Stefan up. He's just going to share his slides there with us.
Thanks, Denise.
Thanks.
It was working a bit before, and I'm not sure if it'll work now. Yeah. Oh, so apparently the screen sharing is disabled. Good. Perfect. Oh, it's wrong. No, hold on. Oh. Okay, there we go. That. Okay, perfect. Thanks, everyone. And yeah, thank you for inviting me, Denise, and great meeting you yesterday, Tom. And we've had a chance to chat, and no doubt we'll continue chatting more over the next years. So I just wanted to say that I hadn't really heard of the term scholar activism before, and so I was invited to give a presentation recently that was the theme, and so it kind of seems to fit a little bit with what we do, but I'm also wondering if it goes far enough. And so what I'm going to be doing is really, oh, what happened? Trying to figure out how I can advance my.
The bottom.
Oh, there we go. Good. Okay, so yeah, I got here on Tuesday, almost didn't get out of Winnipeg, and so left very early in the morning at 6 a.m. so I could get out here to teach my morning class, kind of back at the University of Manitoba, and you can see how terrible it was. So I got to kind of hang out at the airport for 4 or 5 hours getting out here. But left at 5 in the morning, and there's no doubt that I was the only person in our household moving, including Loki, the lab here. So it's been busy the last few days, and I've had a chance to meet a number of people. And When I was thinking about Trapline, certainly we, as you'll see, do lots of work with Indigenous-led projects. But I also kind of used the Trapline as kind of, in a sense, an opportunity for me to reflect where I've been and where I'm becoming. And so in a sense, over the last 25 years since I started that at U of M, is what's been taking place there. You can see here that all my kind of formal degrees were pretty much up to my postdoc in biology. And, you know, it's interesting listening to Tom talking about kind of, in a sense, pesticides and glyphosate, Roundup, and its use, certainly in forestry, which is still taking place, certainly in hydro corridors, which we'll talk about a little bit, but in agriculture. And so my master's was in agriculture, and certainly I found it too herbicide centered. And so I went back to farming for nature, my PhD, focusing on restoration and remediation. And then you'll hear that I wanted to include humans in terms of the work that I was doing. And I've been trained to ignore humans. And so basically, in a sense, kind of ever since then, I've been trying to figure out how to bring humans into our work explicitly, and especially Indigenous science and Indigenous ways of knowing. And to that degree, these are just some, I did my PhD in Point Pelee in southwestern Ontario, and you can see the kind of work that I was doing, looking at restoration. And it was clear that at that point, we were restoring from some kind of human disturbance, but it just wasn't part of the picture. No one was interested in this particular Indigenous community. All of the stories that they had to tell, that history. And ironically, you know, I was looking at the recovery from that human presence. And so that's where I decided to switch my focus in northern BC to really start looking at that. So our work, if you like, tends to be Indigenous-led, as Denise was saying, team-based, community engaged. And by team-based, it's big teams, people bringing multiple kinds of expertise to the table. If there's any way of linking Western science with Indigenous science, it has to be holistic. And so we have to step outside of our own disciplinary training. And so that's the team-based component. A lot of it's land-based, strength-based. So a lot of the thinking still around Indigenous communities is deficit-based, right? And there's so much strength and capacity there that we're always trying to share capacity and kind of build and affirm the knowledge that exists there. Probably heard the term knowledge mobilization. And so a lot of what I'll be talking about is getting knowledge out, percolating through society. We go one step further. And so I came up with this term knowledge insurgence. And that's really trying to use knowledge strategically to affect change, social change, political change. And to that end, kind of working towards environmental and social justice. I'm not going to talk about this, but this is the schematic that I found around scholarship, activism, organizing, participatory action research, critical thinking, or social justice scholarship. This is all reflected in the work that we do, and hopefully it kind of comes through when I talk about it. So immediately after I started at University of Manitoba, we immediately got into trouble around a film that we made, focusing at that point on farmers and ag biotechnology. And we ended up getting in an academic freedom case, which is still talked about by our National Union of University Teachers as being one of the landmark cases in Canada around academic freedom, in part because we were highlighting, most farmers use biotechnology, right? Except for organic farmers and a few others. And so it was very, very positive. And then we interviewed someone called Percy Schmeiser that you might have heard of, who took kind of Monsanto to the Supreme Court, or they took him to the Supreme Court. And we got in a big fight with the University of Manitoba at that point because they were wooing Monsanto in terms of trying to invite them onto campus. And so that was a 3-year fight, and that we finally won. And so at that point, though, it's pretty clear that I wasn't a good fit in the botany department where I was kind of located. They didn't like what I did, and I liked what they did, but but anyway, so we agreed amiably to part ways, and so now I'm in the Faculty of Environment. And so a lot of what we do, though, still is involved in education, and shifting education from being completely campus-based to being land-based and out in community. At that point, we were working with the now past elder, Gary Raven from Hollow Water First Nation. You might know Leanne Simpson here. And so we were all doing land-based education together in the early to mid 2000, like say 2002 to 2005. And I was still trying to figure out how to get research that was kind of culturally appropriate and useful out into the community. And certainly working with both of these First Nations folks was a tremendous step in that direction. We continue that work now through a lot of our land-based youth-focused science, where we're linking environmental science with kind of teaching from the part of knowledge keepers and elders around local environmental issues, and having a lot of fun doing that. And most recently, that's reflected in a project here that we're doing with Lakehead and people like Denise and others who are here today, kind of where we're trying to find ways of supporting Indigenous students, kind of wanting to do environmental work of whatever sort, and in a sense, kind of reaching back into the communities and letting them make choices that make sense to them and affirming that all the way through if they're interested in research careers. And so we're doing that with the Lakehead University, with University of Manitoba, and then a university college in the north of Manitoba called UCN. And we're trying to unfold that program, and I've got some pamphlets that I'll kind of show you. And so in a sense, we just had our first intake of students, undergraduate and graduate students, and 80% of the funding goes to supporting those students in ways that work for them and for their communities. And so if you get a chance, pick up that pamphlet. Some of you might know Mike Rennie here, and there are others, kind of lots of folks involved in that program. And so I brought some copies of that. And so if you're interested, I kind of scope out the website that'll be reflected in the pamphlets, or it's indigenouscreate.ca. And it will, and it kind of, you'll see there's opportunities to get funding moving forward. We also, this is Ashley Wolf, who's from Peguis First Nation, kind of leading a workshop around water quality, kind of in a recent workshop that we did. And so we do all sorts of other things as well, and including coming out here. And so it's, so you might recognize all of these people. Okay, so focusing more on Indigenous-led work. And how much time do I have, Denise?
7 minutes.
7 minutes, okay, well, we're, okay, you're running a tight ship, okay, it's, okay, so I won't have to, I do want to show one video, and so, but we also did a lot of work around the oil sands and downstream from the oil sands, looking at Indigenous health and well-being, traditional foods, contaminants. It was all community-led. And we just applied 10 years later to do some follow-up work. And the stories that they talked about in those communities, it's Mikisew Cree First Nation, Athabasca Chippewa First Nation, and Fort Chippewa, are very, very similar to the kinds of stories that Tom was talking about today. We made a documentary film, and I won't have time to play the trailer, but it's online, kind of and that was our first kind of real effort to take the research we were doing and really make it available through documentary film in an audience, and it was seen in screen festivals around the world. The frustrating part of that was that it was two communities not always getting along very well together. trying to affect change around what was then and still is seen as the economic engine of Canada, and getting all sorts of pushback. We came out very strongly showing that there were impacts of the oil sands on well-being and on the environment, as well as kind of BC Hydro through the Peace River, and no one paid any attention at all. And so kind of that gave us the idea of maybe doing something, this Manitoba-based, that was more an alliance of communities working with academics and lawyers and environmental NGOs, all working together to amplify those community voices. It's Indigenous-led, and Elder David Laughlin kind of named it Waniskatan, which is Cree for wake up. And it's something that parents will literally say to their kids when they're trying to get them to school in the morning. And so you can see some of the work that we've done highlighting greenwashing. Hydro has repackaged itself as being green and clean and good for the environment as a renewable source of energy. And so, you know, we've done things like that. We had a Itaskinau, which is kind of our land, and it was an international conference that we brought people together from around the world to talk about their experience, and not just academics. I mean, absolutely hydro impacted communities from and kind of representatives from around the world, explicitly focusing on energy justice here. And that gave rise to this organization, Dam Watch International, that is still moving forward, that kind of, in a sense, still links people kind of like Tom's experiences and from around the world who are struggling with mega dams. This is the video I actually wanted to show you. Recently, we had an all candidates meeting where we kind of showcased one of the founders of Waniskatan, Elder Noah Masan, who's passed away, kind of a member from another community that was displaced by hydro, OPCN or South Indian Lake, Les Dysart. And it was all candidates meeting. So it was just before our Manitoba elections. And as I'm sure you know, we have the first First Nations premier in Canada, in Manitoba, Wapkanu, and so just highlighting though hydro and trying to get, because NDP are dam builders just like the Conservatives. So, and so I just want, hopefully this will work. We'll see. Okay, how am I gonna? Oh, I think that's fine, right? Can you hear that? No, it's it said something about sharing my audio. Oh, I do. Okay. So we'll do it like this. It's all in subtitles anyway, so maybe I'll just put it back.
So what do you think of the rule so far? Okay, roughly my top line runs right here. It comes from over there. It goes that way. You know the difference? It's wide open. They're gonna put 3 power lines there. They just have to make a road, but it's only for Manitoba Hydro to freeze them so they can live in Yellow, go back and forth. What can they do? We're just trying to tell a story about our land. What would they do to us? What can they do? Would you fight if they're chasing our animals away? Like we live off the moose, beaver, muskrat, chicken, you don't hardly see anything. We're fighting for our land. My mom he wanted to eat fish. So I told my mom, I'll go catch fish for you. My mama said, who's gonna go with you? I said lady, that was my little dog. I had a little chihuahua. So I was sitting on that, my little dog noticed there was somebody on the shoreline. And I seen that guy sneaking around the bush there, trying to see what I was doing. It was that CEO. So when I come to the shore, that CEO come to me. He said, "Hey, sir," he says, "I see you're sitting on that, you can't block the whole, that creek at the mouth of the creek." And I told him, "I'm not blocking, there's still a lot of room there, 20 feet." But he started getting me Hector. He's gonna pull my net out, he's gonna confiscate my Bluetooth. I sort of scared him, I think I was like, "Oh, man." I think it was, he backed away. And he started talking nice to me, you know. So I started being nice to him too. I said, "Well, you got time?" I said, "Let's go for a ride over there." Then we went for a ride a little ways by house was there, down the road. And I said, "What do you see over there?" I told him. And he looked at it. He said, "There's a blue building there, towers." But he didn't even see the whole river system is blocked by the dam. I didn't see that in his mind. I said, "Why is Manitoba Hydro block the whole river system? Fish can't go up no more," I said. "And you're going about mine, that isn't staying there overnight." Then he sort of hit him, you know. It's kind of embarrassed, I guess, what I told him. He left my net alone, he never bothered me after that.
Okay, thanks. So that's the kind of work that we do, really trying to get, oh, there we go. And we recently applied for phase 2 funding that would expand our admittedly Manitoba-centered efforts into to BC around Site C that you might have heard. You might have heard of Muskrat Falls in Labrador, and then the Romaine Complex. And so it's all community-led, Indigenous-led, and it's all very much advocacy-based, reaching out to decision makers around these issues. And so this would give you an idea of some of the, of our kind of our ideas moving forward. I really kind of COVID obviously was devastating to all of us, you know, around the world, but especially for Indigenous communities. And so we got a fair bit of funding through the pandemic to support communities in light of their anticipated concerns that they would no longer have access to health data. And so it was a multiple kind of dimensional project. It brought kind of Indigenous communities from around the world together, and kind of we did a conference, a virtual conference, obviously, kind of meaning, I guess in a jib way, looking after one another. And you know, lots of outreach and videos and infographics, kind of showcased by CIHR, kind of and I won't have time to show that, but a lot of risk communication featuring Kakaku, which is a Cree-speaking raven puppet that went viral. It was really exciting to see people around the world interested. That blended kind of Cree culture and humor with kind of messages around public health and working with knowledge keepers and elders. That project gave rise to one of our big projects around data sovereignty. So over the last 3 years, we've developed an app that enables communities to collect their own data for themselves, focusing really on whatever it is that they're interested in. And so really highlighting, you've probably heard of OCAP and the importance of owning and controlling data on the part of communities, and so they control it, and And that's being used by over 30 organizations, and communities across Canada. And we're talking about upscaling it. I just saw this kind of Meet Lithium kind of a bus advertisement a couple of days ago. Our kid took a photo of it for me. And so critical minerals and the green transition is a big deal. It's an opportunity for communities, but it's also a potential threat. And there's a whole legacy in Manitoba. I'm sure it's the same thing in Northwestern Ontario around mining. No one knows kind of what's in those landscapes. Communities are still there. All the settler miners have left. And so in a sense, kind of our work is trying to figure out kind of what's up with those past and ongoing mines. Donna Dumas here in her project in Puckatawagan is a kind of a key member in that initiative as well. What I wanted to spend a few minutes talking about was this community-based monitoring project, which in a sense kind of is another grant that we're doing with Denise and other folks from Lakehead. And so this is focused up here, right on the edge of the permafrost, this community split lake or Tatasquiac Cree Nation. And so it's entirely led by them. Robert Spence here, and this is Taylor Galvin, who's an Anishinaabe student from down south. It's all Robert, and they have this tremendous Guardians program, and they're bringing the scientists on, but it's their work, and we're just supporting it. And so it's involved tours of campus, kind of them figuring out what's involved, how they want scientists to be involved in the research, if at all. The last time they came down with youth and the school principal came down with land-based educators, it's all going to be youth engaged and focusing on capacity sharing in that regard. Lots of brainstorming, lots of work, looking at mining, looking at climate change, looking at hydro, looking at municipal waste all together, multiple stressors. And again, that they're actually meeting this afternoon, and they have a very strong idea of what it is that they want to do. In many cases, we're just getting out of the way. And so I have a few pamphlets around that as well that I brought down, showcasing both the knowledge keepers, the guardians in the project, as well as some of the scientists involved. And so please scope those out if you want. And then now it's this idea that we can have infrastructure and equipment that's dispersed out to communities. And so that's the next kind of application that we're being putting forward through something called CFI, or the Canadian Foundations for Innovation, which would just get, and so these are just off OneNote on my iPad, and it's brand new. But so, and so getting it out into community across the country, and this in a sense is, and Denise, I won't tell which dot you are here. There's Indigenous scholars, which are kind of in a sense colored dots, the allies, which are empty dots. There's an NSE expertise here, and social science and humanities reflected there, community engaged versus university centered. And so there's a tremendous diversity of, that probably won't mean anything to you. And getting these small equipment packs out into community so that they can do what it is that they want to do. And maybe they'll decide not to involve university researchers at all. And that's even better, right, in a lot of ways. And so that's the work that we've been doing. Again, back to this, you can decide whether it's scholar activism or just simply activism. And yeah, thanks for that. Lots of people involved all the way through. And thank you for listening.
All right, thank you. Miigwech. So we have about exactly 1 minute left. So we have probably time for one question. So if anyone has like a burning question they want to ask, we will be here for a few minutes after too, so you can feel free to come up and speak individually to our two presenters as well. Are there any questions that wants to field? I hear a loon. I like it. I like the ringtone. All right, well, on behalf of the Department of, or the Office of Indigenous Initiatives, Lakehead University and Research and Innovation Week, I'd like to say Chimigwech to both of you for coming. Both of you are visiting from different areas, but really enjoyed having you here in Thunder Bay for a little bit of time. The project that Stefan was mentioning, for those Indigenous students who get the newsletter from the Indigenous Student Services Center, I sent the information. It should be in your inbox this week. There is money for graduate students, so it's worth exploring. Check that out. For professors in the room, if you have students that are at the graduate level, please make sure that you reach out to us and we can share that information with you as well.
And even undergraduate students.
Oh,
are gonna get
undergraduates.
to-
Oh, even
yeah.
better. I have a whole class here. Well, part of a whole class. So I'll share it with my class as well. Yeah, so I just want to really say, Miigwech, thank you. You've given us a lot to think about. And really thinking about, you know, from a historical space of intergenerations, multi-generations of families, traditional territories, thinking about what it means, you know, moving forward, how we've been impacted by hydroelectric dams and river diversions in particular. Certainly my territory is one of those rivers. I think there's like 3 river diversions and a bunch of dams on one river. And for the first time this fall, I saw photos where the river was almost dry. And that made me think about treaty rights, because Treaty 9, the words "as long as the rivers flow" is one of the key phrases for the treaty. And if hydroelectricity blocks off all the rivers and there's no more rivers flowing, you know, what does that mean for our treaty rights? And so that was kind of a bigger question I was having this fall. I was having a bit of a mental crisis looking at this river that was just a trickle through one little spot, and it was just empty riverbed. Never seen it like that in my life, so it was shocking. But definitely a lot to think about, and for the students who will be moving out into research this year, next year, when you do your 4th year, and if you continue on or into the workplace, really think about that. And I know we have some community members here as well, so there's a lot of opportunity. We do have a guest who's come all the way from Wales. And he is doing some filming, or will be doing some filming with some of his students from Wales next year this time. So he's here visiting, looking at some of the areas, but really going to be thinking about traditional, like Indigenous voices and what that means and the connection to the land. So it's nice to see that these ideas are going very global. And, you know, it's not just here in Thunder Bay or, you know, this particular Anishinaabe territory, but really it is happening across Canada, but also across the world. So really great that you could come and join us.